The Face in the Frost by John Bellairs. 8. Around 2 in the morning, Prospero woke up and his feet were on the cold floor before he knew what had awakened him. Downstairs, someone was pounding on the big front door. They were heavy, resonant blows, not made with a fist, but with something harder, like the butt end of a sword. Resisting the urge to throw open the window and shout insults, Prospero got up and looked through the glass. He had been about to light a candle when he put it down now and opened the window slowly so that he could hear what was being said. There were soldiers down there, mail-shirted pikemen in rusty soup-plate helmets. They carried saw-toothed bills, blunt-ended broadswords, maces, and battle-axes. Even in the waning moonlight, Prospero could see that their equipment was dirty and corroded. Some of the pike points were cockeyed, and only half of the men, there were 50 altogether that he could see, wore coats of arms of any kind. Those that did had the badly sewn-on emblems of some local ruler, a shield with 3 Greek crosses and a hatchet. Now there was a scraping of bolts as the innkeeper opened up. The man who had been doing the pounding, Prospero could not see him because of the overhang, shouted, "All right, men, come on in, a few drinks, and then we've got work." The pikemen, some of them hawking and spitting loudly, clattered in after their leader. Outside Prospero's door there was a small staircase that led down to a dark pantry full of brackish-smelling empty barrels. The wooden partition of the service window was slid back just a bit, and through it Prospero saw the stamping, grouchy soldiers sloshing beer from stoneware jugs into their tankards. The leader was dumping coins into the cupped hands of the sleepy-eyed innkeeper, who asked what was going on. "We're going over to the north, to burn that town. What's its name?" "Bishop's Bows," the innkeeper. "Why are you doing this?" "We've finally figured out what's going on. Town's full of evil people, witches. I have an order here from Duke Harold to burn it to the ground. Here, look at it. Not that you have anything to say in this." He unrolled a large parchment that trailed lead and yellow wax seals on twisted strings of skin. The signature, a cross with a letter on each point, was so large that it covered a quarter of the page. "They deserve it, too," the leader went on. "You've seen the things. Half the people in Wellfront are afraid to go down into their own cellars. Shadows moving, screams from kettles when there isn't any fire. Well, a little fire will teach them. A couple of my men are getting wood for torches. Do you have any pitch?" "In the basement. I use it on the roof." "That's fine. We're going to use it on the roof, too." He laughed, spitting flecks of brown beer on the muddy floor. "Ha, ha, 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 ha." Prospero did not wait any longer. He climbed down the steep stairs quietly, hands on the dark steps in front of him, and he was soon shaking Roger awake. "Come on, they're going to burn the village. How far is Bishop's Bows?" Roger sat up. Huh? Bishop's Bows, 5 miles. There's a bridge. That's why it's called Bishop's Bows. Bows are the arches of a bridge. Wait till I get dressed." In a few minutes, the 2 wizards were opening one of the several side doors of the inn. A cold beaded lamp on a curved hook hung over them, and a few late fall insects clung to the mottled glass. Each man could see how nervous the other looked. "Well," said Prospero, whispering, "have we got everything?" "I think so. Let's hope those louts stay here for a while. We will have to walk fast." And they did walk fast. For old men, Roger and Prospero could really travel on foot if they had to. And before long, the noisy inn with its clattering cans and torchlight was far behind. In a rising wind that thrashed the nearby bare bushes by the roadside, they hiked down the gravelly strip of yellow clay. There was a bridge, a long flattened arch of close-fitted, unmortared stones. Bishop Hatto's arms were carved in relief on the keystone faces. Trickling moss hung over his moons and dogs' heads, and his mitre was trimmed with stars of yellow stonecrop. At each end of this wide bridge sat a pair of stone wardens, giant Norse chessmen in high-backed chairs. Hunched, gloomy kings with swords on their knees, the keepers of the bishop's bridge, sat staring with deep-drilled empty pupils. Prospero hung his hat on one of them. "Well, here we are, Roger. You'd better go ahead and get the townspeople out of bed. You know the people around here, and I don't. Don't scare them too much. I think I can keep those clots at a distance for a while." Roger walked out onto the bridge and looked over the side. Fast water hissed around the back marble pillars. Little clusters of bubbles moved downstream. I hate to say this, said Roger, but I think you'd better destroy this bridge. I've been thinking about some things on the way here, Harold. On the way here, Harold is one of the few southern kings with a real following, and he is also one of the few who think looting and burning are manly sports. There'll be more soldiers before we get rid of Melicus, if we can, and there are no stone bridges for 300 miles either way. We can count the northerners on the border to burn the wooden bridges, if it looks like war. I guess you're right. Very well, I'll meet you when this business is over. And this time, don't turn into a monster. I'll try not to. Good luck. Roger waved and walked across the bridge, clicking his staff on the rough stones of the railing. Now that Prospero was alone, he found that he wanted to smoke. Out came the stubby briar and tin matchbox with the nutmeg grater sides. Brip went the match, and it shot little pinpricks before flaming an acrid yellow. Prospero lit his pipe and threw the match into the water, where it sank like a nail. It gave a skyrockety kafoosh, and the whole river under and around the bridge was lit up. Awakened fish swam in little flipping darts, and a turtle started to swim toward the surface. Prospero was leaning over the rail and laughing at the idiocy and essential triviality of a wizard who made magic matches. He laughed until he realized they hadn't the faintest idea how to destroy a bridge. And now the soldiers were coming. He could hear them clanking and stomping, and over the black horizon was a bouncing orange glimmer. They must be about 2 hills away, he thought. Bridges. How to destroy a bridge. No time to go riffling through a book, and anyway, he knew he wouldn't find anything there. Tarot cards? Ha! Well, it was worth a try, and from the sounds up the road, he would only have one try. He dug into the bag and brought out a pack of tarot cards in a painted cardboard case. But which ones to use? Some sort of logic had to be followed, and it would take several years to try all possible combinations. What about the 4 aces at the corners, and the tower struck by lightning in the center? All right, but hurry. He ran from one corner of the bridge to the other, using candle wax to hold down the cards. He put the aces of cups, coins, staves, and swords on the 4 rail ends of the bridge. The wind had died down, so it was easy to hold the cards in place. A whack of his hand squashed the pasteboard against the wax. Now he was in the middle of the bridge again, holding the tower card that signifies madness and destruction. He pasted it to the center of the bridge on the pentagonal block that lined up the 2 keystones. Stamping on the card with his heel, he shouted, "Bridge break! Stones crack!" He was not surprised when nothing happened. The dirty straw-covered stones were still in place. The fern-capitulated marble columns that Bishop Hatto had stolen from a church still held up their load, and the soldiers were coming. They were on top of the hill that looked down on the bridge, a cluster of shiny, blood-flashed kettles with dark, bristled faces underneath, tipping pike poles and pendulum-swaying chain maces. Prospero stood and watched them come. They probably can't see me yet, he thought, with those blazing torches on a moonless night. He walked to the rail and relit his pipe. The troop halted at the edge of the bridge with a dishpan clatter. Their leader squinted into the darkness for a minute, and then he handed his torch to someone. He drew his sword, a plain iron blade without bosses or jewels. Now his feet were clumping on the pavement. Prospero felt the ragged blade point touch his beard. "Well, old man, what are you doing here?" "Looking at the fish, if it please your lordship." Prospero tipped his hat and blew smoke out of the corners of his mouth. "Really? In the dark? You'll be able to see them better from the bottom of the river." "Ah, but I won't be able to smoke in all that wet, will I?" Prospero raised his arm and threw his pipe on the stones, where it burst with a sudden red flash that lit the faces of the 2 men. A second after came an aerial bomb thud that hurt the ears of everyone standing near. The leader's sword flew into the air and came down, looking like a big button hook. He ran back, holding his ears. Little corkscrewing ribbons of fire screeched after the army as they turned into a colliding, shouting metal thicket that hustled away down the road. Prospero stood there, wishing that he knew how to destroy bridges. An image came back that had registered in his mind when he first saw the bridge. One of the staring stone wardens had a little crack around his neck. Prospero ran to the figure, pulled off the head, and with a sudden heave threw it off the bridge. The carved lump hit the mud with a thwack, and now he could see a little square hole in the neck. A piece of paper was in it. Without stopping to read the charm, which might have been interesting at another time, Prospero tore it up and went back to the middle of the bridge. He tapped the card with his staff. "Bridge break!" The mate of the headless statue pitched forward on its face. One of the mossy coats of arms fell into the stream. The pillars shook in their muddy sockets, and the bridge started to lurch in hiccupy spasms. But it did not collapse. The soldiers were coming back now, shouting. Prospero thumped his staff as if he were churning butter, all the while shouting, "Break, blast you, break!" When the soldiers were on the bridge again, bill points lowered for a charge, they saw a sweating old man throw down his stick. He took the remaining cards from his pocket and threw them in the air. A fountain of orange and black strips fell around him. The cloud of cards started to whirl, and a stiff, streaming wind began to blow between the high curbs of the bridge, freezing the little army in the act of charging, so that for a moment it looked like a statuary group. Then they were blowing down the road, skidding on rocks and vaulting very professionally on bending pike staffs. The wind blew them flat to the ground and kept on blowing. 5 miles away, the innkeeper of 5 Dials was emptying a tub of dishwater in his backyard, a little alcove in the cup of the overhanging cliff. He heard a whizzing overhead and looked up to see the copper weathercock spinning into a blurry ball. As he watched in stupid amazement, he heard a bang out in front. Peeking around the shingled corner, he saw a helmet rocking in the road like a little round boat. Back on the bridge, Prospero was running on a pitching stone deck. Slime-haired blocks popped up and fell into the stream. He heard a long roar and many heavy splashes behind him, and suddenly he was standing on a tipping pile of stones. One arm heaved the bag to the bank, the other threw the staff spinning into the dark grass. A standing broad jump brought him to the bank, where he fell into a clump of thistles. He rolled out of it and sat there, with little forked burrs littering his robe. A shadow moved over his head as one of the stone men. There were 2 on this side of the well. There were 2 on this side as well. Stood up on grinding stone knees, raising a thick sword in blocky fists. The glum face nodded, the knees cracked, and the statue, sitting in his chair again, slid backwards down the bank. And we will pause there.